Across America, the housing market is revealing a new species of failure. Not the familiar pattern of soaring prices that price out buyers. Not the frenzied bidding wars that characterized recent years. Not the institutional investors systematically swallowing entire suburban neighborhoods. Something considerably more alarming than any of those dynamics. Silence. The eerie quiet of economic retreat. Half-constructed homes standing skeletal against empty skies. Abandoned concrete foundations slowly weathering in the elements. Model homes locked and dark, their interiors gathering dust. Entire planned neighborhoods frozen mid-construction, as if someone hit pause on the American dream itself and walked away from the controls. It's manifesting in city after city, metro after metro, with unsettling consistency. And this isn't just one over-leveraged developer leaving a single project unfinished after running out of capital. This is an entire industry pulling back simultaneously, coordinating retreat across multiple markets. Why this synchronized withdrawal? Because the fundamental numbers finally stopped working. The economic equation that justified continued construction has broken down completely. Construction costs exploded to levels that destroyed profit margins. Buyer demand evaporated as affordability collapsed. Financing conditions tightened dramatically as lenders recognized deteriorating fundamentals. Wage growth fell catastrophically behind price appreciation, severing the connection between local incomes and local housing costs. And the same speculative boom that created America's biggest housing construction surge in modern history has now reversed itself into a slow, grinding, systematic collapse. Tonight, we're taking you inside the 10 U.S. cities where residential construction has stopped cold, where the machinery of development has ground to a halt, and where developers are actively abandoning projects they confidently started during the frenzy of 2021 and 2022. If you're planning to purchase a home in the near future, if you're seriously considering real estate investment, or if you simply want to understand where America's broader economy is heading and what these housing market dynamics reveal about systemic conditions, this analysis is your essential roadmap. Stay until the end because the number one city on this list doesn't just reveal a localized slowdown or temporary setback. It reveals the complete blueprint of a housing correction that could spread nationwide, that could define the next economic cycle. And if you appreciate deep dive, cinematic, data-driven breakdowns like this that go beyond surface headlines, subscribe to across.us4, where we systematically analyze every corner of America's economic story with clarity, comprehensive data, and real-world insight that connects macro trends to ground-level reality. Cape Coral used to represent Florida's quiet miracle, an accessible success story. A sprawling waterfront city featuring over 400 miles of canals and residential properties at price points the average American family could still realistically afford. Between 2020 and 2022, it transformed almost overnight into one of the hottest migration destinations in the entire country. Median home values didn't just increase, they exploded upward more than 70%, crossing $420,000 seemingly overnight. Builders swarmed the area like prospectors during a gold rush. Building permits skyrocketed to levels never before seen in the city's history. And entire neighborhoods broke ground simultaneously, transforming agricultural land into residential grids at breakneck pace. But the boom was constructed on fragile ground, both metaphorically and literally. After Hurricane Ian devastated the region, new FEMA flood maps fundamentally redrew large portions of Cape Coral into substantially higher risk flood zones. Insurance premiums didn't just increase, they tripled in many cases. Some homeowners saw their annual insurance costs hit $10,000 to $15,000 annually just for basic coverage. That's insurance alone, not including mortgage payments, property taxes, or maintenance. Retirees on fixed incomes immediately backed out of purchase contracts they could no longer afford. Younger families with children shifted their search criteria inland to lower risk areas. And even cash buyers who don't need financing developed cold feet about long-term ownership costs. In just 12 months, the market dynamics completely inverted. Active listings doubled as sellers panicked, prices dropped 12% from peak levels. 1 in 4 homes sold under the original asking price, often significantly under. And the biggest red flag revealing long-term problems? Builders have systematically walked away from waterfront projects frozen mid-frame, abandoning partially completed structures because the long-term insurance risk exposure now mathematically outweighs any potential profit margin. Cape Coral hasn't experienced total collapse. That's not the accurate characterization. But it's correcting rapidly and painfully. And in a flood-prone region with rising climate-related costs and tightening insurance markets, this correction will be prolonged and brutal for those who bought at peak prices. Austin was universally recognized as America's poster child for explosive, technology-driven housing growth. The success story that everyone pointed to. From 2020 to 2022, the transformation was staggering. Median home prices surged 70% in just 24 months. Properties sold within days of listing, often with multiple competing offers. New construction stretched aggressively in every geographic direction, pushing the metro boundaries outward at unprecedented rates. But the same economic force that built Austin into a boomtown is the identical force that broke it. The technology sector layoffs hit Austin harder and more severely than any other city in the Sunbelt region. Meta announced major cuts. Oracle reduced headcount. Tesla implemented hiring freezes and layoffs. And hundreds of venture-backed startups either failed entirely or cut high-earning staff to extend runway. These weren't minimum wage service jobs disappearing. These were six-figure positions evaporating. And suddenly, almost overnight, the qualified buyers with sufficient income disappeared from the market. Current inventory levels are up more than 60% year over year, a massive supply increase. Redfin reports that 1 in 3 new home purchase contracts now cancel before reaching closing, an extraordinarily high failure rate. Major national builders like Lennar and D.R. Horton have quietly paused entire suburban developments in surrounding communities. Leander, Kyle, Manor, and Hutto all experiencing construction freezes. Drive through these areas today and the evidence is unmistakable. Paved roads extending through empty fields with no houses. Residential streets that terminate abruptly in vacant lots. Wooden frames that stopped mid-construction, now weathering in the elements. Sales centers permanently shuttered, their parking lots empty. Austin isn't dying as a city, that's too dramatic. But the carefully constructed illusion of infinite growth has shattered completely. Its primary affordability advantage compared to coastal cities has evaporated. Its vaunted tech employment engine is sputtering and slowing. And the empty grid patterns visible on the outskirts of the city stand as stark warnings of what inevitably happens when speculative development outruns underlying economic reality and sustainable demand. Reno spent an entire decade systematically reinventing itself, transforming its identity. No longer content being dismissed as simply a smaller Las Vegas, it successfully became a legitimate technology and logistics hub powered by Tesla's massive gigafactory and steady migration from the expensive Bay Area. Between 2020 and 2022, home prices jumped nearly 60% as newcomers competed for limited inventory. Builders rushed aggressively into the surrounding desert to meet what appeared to be insatiable demand. But by 2025, the desert has gone quiet. Ominously quiet. Active inventory has doubled from previous levels. New home contract cancellations are surging to concerning rates. Median prices are down nearly 10% from peak and falling. Entire master plan developments in Spanish Springs, South Reno, and D'Andrea now sit conspicuously half-finished. Framed homes bleaching under the intense desert sun. Empty lots surrounded by chain-link fencing. Sales offices gathering dust, their signs fading. Why the sudden, dramatic collapse? 2 primary reasons, both fundamental. First, the California migration that drove demand has slowed to a trickle. Zillow search data from San Francisco buyers is down 45% since 2021, a massive decrease in buyer interest. Second, and perhaps more critically long-term, water. Nevada's water situation is no longer a distant future concern that can be ignored. It is a present, active constraint on development. The Truckee River Basin is stressed beyond sustainable capacity, and new environmental requirements mandated by state and federal agencies have made residential development far more expensive and complicated. Required impact studies, mitigation measures, and infrastructure improvements add substantial costs. Builders aren't just slowing their pace. They're actively leaving the market entirely, selling land holdings and abandoning projects. Reno still possesses a viable economic future. But the gold rush era of easy profits and endless demand is definitively over. And what's been left behind in its wake are unfinished neighborhoods, disappointed homeowners, and rapidly fading optimism about the region's trajectory. Raleigh represented the pandemic-era dream destination for relocating families and remote workers. Strong technology employment, excellent public schools, reasonable space and lot sizes, and genuine affordability compared to northeastern and western markets. From 2020 through 2022, prices climbed 55% as developers aggressively turned agricultural farmland into suburban residential grids at a dizzying, unsustainable pace. But 2025 tells a dramatically different story. Active listings are up more than 80% year over year. Pending sales, the forward indicator of closings, have dropped nearly 30%. New construction activity has slowed to an absolute crawl. In outlying communities like Clayton, Wendell, and Fuquay-Varina, you now see the unmistakable signs of retreat. Empty concrete slabs poured but never built upon. Weathered wooden frames standing incomplete. Overgrown lots where construction stopped months ago. Model homes without any staff present, locked and dark. The fundamental cause? Affordability shattered completely and suddenly. Mortgage rates sustained above 7% killed first-time buyer demand, the market segment that drives volume. Nearly 40% of current renters in the greater Raleigh region cannot qualify for even a starter home based on debt-to-income ratios and down payment requirements. That's not a small problem, that's a systemic affordability crisis. Builders are stuck holding inventory they cannot move at current prices, and the once relentless pace of construction that defined Raleigh's growth has been replaced with hesitation, uncertainty, and strategic retreat. Raleigh isn't collapsing into economic depression, but it's no longer the guaranteed growth engine that investors once believed it was. The easy money phase has ended. Phoenix was widely recognized as the fastest-growing metropolitan area in America during the recent boom cycle. Cheap, abundant land, favorable weather year-round, room to expand in literally every geographic direction without significant natural barriers. Between 2020 and 2022, more than 60,000 residential housing units were in various stages of active development. Home prices soared nearly 70%, among the highest appreciation rates nationally. But in 2025, the desert has gone eerily quiet. Demand has evaporated across all segments. Investor purchases, which drove significant volume, are down 45%. Active listings have surged as sellers panic. Prices are falling month over month. Construction has paused across the entire valley. In rapidly growing suburbs like Goodyear, Queen Creek, Buckeye, and Surprise, abandoned construction reveals the scale of retreat. Empty residential lots with utility pipes protruding from the ground, connected to nothing. Framed homes without any construction crews present, tools gone, streets fully paved for neighborhoods that never materialized, streetlights installed along roads leading to vacant land, and Phoenix's hidden structural crisis, water availability, has now become a direct regulatory barrier to new permits. Arizona state authorities have paused new subdivision approvals in several counties due to serious groundwater depletion and sustainability limits. This isn't temporary. This is a fundamental constraint on future growth that developers didn't adequately price into their models. The booming city that symbolized Sunbelt expansion is now simultaneously overbuilt, overheated, and dangerously overextended. Phoenix's market correction is only beginning. The full adjustment will take years. Boise represented America's pandemic fairy tale, the small city success story. A modest regional center suddenly transformed by an influx of remote workers, outdoor lifestyle seekers, and California buyers armed with cash and equity. Prices jumped more than 60% in less than 2 years, one of the highest percentage increases in the entire nation. Developers went all in, betting everything on sustained demand. But the boom was temporary, driven by unique pandemic conditions that have now reversed. And the current unwind is absolutely brutal for those caught on the wrong side. Prices are down nearly 20% from peak levels. Available inventory has doubled. Homes take triple the time to sell compared to 2022, and many still don't sell. In surrounding communities like Kuna, Meridian, and Nampa, you'll find entire neighborhoods frozen mid-construction. Places where agricultural farmland met concrete foundations and framing, and then everything just stopped. The core structural problem that doomed Boise's boom: local wages never matched or even approached the housing price surge. Boise's median household income cannot support the inflated mortgage payments left behind by the speculative bubble. And with corporate remote work policies reversing across the economy, many of the Bay Area migrants who fueled the initial explosion have already left, returning to urban centers or relocating again. Boise's construction slowdown isn't a temporary blip or seasonal adjustment. It's a fundamental reset to sustainable levels aligned with local economic capacity. The city will survive, but the boom era pricing will not. Denver represents the emerging American paradox in housing, a genuinely thriving city with strong economic fundamentals, yet simultaneously experiencing a housing market running completely out of momentum and air. Available inventory is up 70% since 2023. Pending sales are at a decade low despite population growth. Prices are down more than 12% and still falling. Developers who once pushed residential construction endlessly outward across the Front Range are now systematically canceling projects and walking away from land deals. Drive through Aurora, Commerce City, and Highlands Ranch today, and you'll see the evidence everywhere. Residential streets lined with empty lots, fully improved with utilities but no homes. Half-built condominium complexes, framing exposed to weather, construction equipment removed, sites abandoned, sales teams pulled out, offices closed. Denver's affordability crisis has transitioned from temporary challenge to permanent structural condition. To purchase the median home in Metro Denver, you need household income exceeding $120,000 annually. Local median wages come nowhere close to that threshold. The math killed the market. Simple arithmetic destroyed demand, the slowdown killed construction activity, and Denver's impressive skyline now contrasts sharply and ironically with the quiet, stalled neighborhood spreading below. San Antonio used to be characterized as the quiet competitor, the affordable and stable alternative to flashier Austin. Between 2020 and 2022, it exploded with new residential construction as developers and buyers sought value. But by 2025, the brakes are fully engaged. New home sales are down 30% year over year. Builders are actively canceling previously approved projects. Subdivisions sit conspicuously half-finished across the metro. The fundamental problem is straightforward. Housing prices climbed 50% during the boom years. Wages climbed 12% in the same period. That affordability gap, that massive disconnect, destroyed sustainable demand. San Antonio remains one of Texas's strongest and most diversified economies. But housing prices got dramatically ahead of the underlying economic reality. And the empty concrete slabs stretching across its suburban periphery represent what inevitably happens when optimism and speculation outpace actual income growth. Bakersfield was supposed to remain California's last genuinely affordable refuge, the place where working-class families could still achieve homeownership. But even affordability has absolute limits when costs surge. Building permits jumped nearly 40% during the boom as developers raced to produce homes for the Los Angeles and Bay Area exodus for families fleeing coastal prices. But now the situation has reversed. Prices are falling across all segments, active listings are up 60%. Construction is stalling and stopping across the entire city. And Bakersfield faces unique structural problems that compound the broader slowdown: severe water shortages that limit development, wildfire insurance that's becoming prohibitively expensive or unavailable, environmental restrictions that add costs and delays. Builders are walking away from projects because the financial numbers no longer work at any realistic price point. Buyers are walking away because monthly ownership costs are too high relative to local incomes. What's left behind? Quiet streets, half-built dreams, a stark warning for California's future and the limits of continued development. Las Vegas has always existed on the edge, built on risk, ambition, and perpetual reinvention. A city that embodied speculative optimism. But the 2025 housing market is revealing the hard limits of that gamble. During the recent frenzy, Vegas seemed unstoppable. Home prices surged 50%. Investors flooded in from across the country. Developers built at record speed. Today, construction has collapsed. Builders are defaulting on land purchase deals. Projects are being abandoned mid-development. Entire subdivisions sit half-finished in North Las Vegas, Henderson, and Summerlin. Mortgage payments are up 85% since 2019. Energy and insurance costs have exploded, and investors who once provided market support are retreating fast. Tourism has returned. The Strip is alive. But the housing market is freezing. Vegas provides the clearest proof that when growth is built primarily on speculation instead of sustainable fundamentals, the crash comes fast and leaves permanent scars. These 10 cities tell one unified story. America didn't run out of land. It ran out of buyers who can afford the homes we're building.